Hello everyone, and welcome to the Designscape talk for Future of Trends. I'm Sam Fisher, the event director for Decorex International, and I've got some great panelists with me today to discuss the topic. We have Karen Holler, Brian Woulfe and Susie Rumbold. Could I just ask each of you to introduce yourselves and just give a little insight into the work that you do? Let's start with Karen.
Hi there. So my name's Karen Holler, and my area of specialty is applied colour psychology. And what that means is that I work with behavioural design. So I look at how colour and design influences how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. And I work with major corporate companies and also with designers on how we can use colour and design more consciously in a more positive way. So that's me.
Nice to have you. Susie?
So my name is Susie Rumbold. I am creative director of an interior design company called Tessuto Interiors. I'm also a past president of the British Institute of Interior Design, and I've been doing this for 27 years.
Excellent. Brian?
My name is Brian Wolfe. I founded my design studio, Design by Wolfe, just over a decade ago. We specialize in residential homes for private homeowners and developers, both here and overseas.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining me. So, having worked in the industry myself for a few years, I think the word trend has quite a lot of connotations and also quite a lot of different reactions when you kind of start to talk about them. I think whether it's, the new colour or a new material you're using, or whether we all should be using pineapples in our interior, or it's more to do with the style or the way you use a space. I think, things, it can be taken in very different ways. And we'll come to cover that over the session. But just to kick it off, could I ask Susie, what would you say has been the kind of biggest trend you've seen come through this year? And also on the flip side, if COVID is kind of, I'm trying not to use COVID in a lot of these talks, but if COVID has kind of changed the direction of trends this year?
Well, in terms of certainly the way people are living, and we don't tend to pay much attention to sort of what I would call the kind of the ephemeral trends. We're looking for more seismic shifts in the way people live and how they use their spaces. So the two major trends we've seen this year have been obviously the shift to home working, which has been a major shift for most people. It has impacted on the way they're having to use their homes. And then secondly, as a consequence of that, the move away potentially from open plan space, because so many things have to go on in houses now, often simultaneously, that you can't have someone running a corporation in one corner of the sitting room and someone trying to do a ballet lesson at the other end of the room. So, acoustic separation and all those sorts of things are things that, I think are going to be massive shifts in the way we use spaces going forward. Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Brian?
Yeah, I think Susie's absolutely correct. We've seen a big shift in how people want to plan the use of their spaces. A lot of people are focusing on purchasing or acquiring properties that have outdoor space, terraces, balconies, back gardens, wanting to incorporate indoor-outdoor living spaces and outdoor entertaining spaces into their living quarters and living environments. And I think that's probably something that people won't move away from after this COVID experience. Working from home and the need for reliable Wi-Fi and internet connection means there's an extra focus on people investing into the infrastructure in their homes. So repeaters for the Wi-Fi, putting Cat6 cabling in and outlets into all rooms as opposed to the primary room, so that they can connect their printers and additional devices when they're working from home.
And can I just say that these are all things that were happening prior to the pandemic. It's just that with events of the previous 6 months, it's just accelerated all these things. Everything was coming, but it would have probably taken us another 10 years to get to where we are now. So, the progress has been huge.
I think because people are spending more time in their home, they're willing to spend more now. Outdoor spaces and terraces are items or areas in the home where we've noticed clients have typically said, well, we can do that as a second phase to the works. Let's get the interiors done. Now they're saying, well, let's get it just done up front. We want to be able to use our spaces, enjoy that entertaining space at the start.
Yeah. don't think we were thinking about virtual events quite as much as we are. So things have definitely moved faster. Coming to you, Karen, in your kind of world of colour, how has sort of are colour trends something you look at, or what's the kind of science behind the trends?
Yeah, so I don't get involved with colour trends. I think the work that I do with psychology is almost the antithesis of colour trends. Colour trends is something that I feel is what somebody looks outside themselves to find. It's very much that someone makes a prediction or they make a forecast and they say, this is the colour that's coming, and it's almost slavishly followed. Where psychology, and coming from psychology angle, I'm very much from somebody who connects within and who they are and looking at the authentic self. So it's and finding out what colors that you love regardless of what is on trend. So that's why the work that I do is very separate in that way. But what is interesting is looking at the trends and looking what is going on, because trends can often come in for me in 3 different angles. One that I look to see what the forecasters and the predictors are saying, because I like to review the colors that they've picked, and then I observe what goes on in that year. So last September they would have come out with 2020 colors, and so I'm watching this year to see how their prediction is going along. Now, obviously, with the whole pandemic, this has completely thrown, put a cat among the pigeons, so to speak. So I do watch to see how the prediction marries up with what is going on in society. The other one is that I look to see what is going on in society as a whole. And so, especially now with these last 6 months, I'm looking to see what colours people are radiating towards, because this is what they need and this is what colour means for them. So I'm looking at it from that point of view. And then the other one is what is happening in the world, like big world events. So grey was a great example of this, is what was happening in the world for everyone, or the majority of people, to gravitate towards grey. So I look in trends in a very, very different way. And that's when I usually look at trends, and I usually look at retrospectively to see what the outcome of that colour was.
I don't know whether you feel the same, Brian, but for us, those sort of colour predictions are things that we actively avoid. If somebody tells me that, it's going to be navy blue and blush pink for millennials next year, those are the 2 colours I so will not be using, because when people are investing in their homes, Karen, you're quite right, it's personal to them. So it's what they need rather than what someone else. And also, it's not like going into a shop and buying a T-shirt. This is something that has to last perhaps for 20 years. Something people invest money in a property and they might only do it once. And in the same way that, when you're doing children's rooms, for example, the thing you always hear from the parents is, well, don't make it too babyish because it needs to last. So why would you put trend colours into your interiors? I don't get it.
I think trend colours are a great way of maybe instigating a conversation or getting people to start thinking about doing refurbishment. And then when they start to do the planning, start to think about what colours resonate with them, what makes them feel good, what looks good in the light and the space, and complements the furniture and the style that they're trying to create at home. It serves a purpose of getting people on board and getting them on that journey to designing their home. It's not something we would actively follow or encourage clients to follow, because it has to be more personable to them.
But do you find, like, just you mentioned there, like about clients, but do you find that clients sort of see these trends, from magazines or social media, and then kind of almost ask you to bring those into your designs?
They definitely do, and what we will do, if someone really is desperate to introduce navy blue and blush pink, we will suggest that they introduce it in the cushions, or something that again is slightly ephemeral, that it doesn't matter if it actually starts to look really stale in 2 years' time. The last thing you want to do is walk into someone's house and go, aha, spring summer 2020. That's really not what we're on about here. So if there's something that you can give them that then perhaps it's a lampshade, or that they can then chuck out when they get tired of it, that's fine, because they haven't invested a huge amount of money in it.
Yeah, I think incorporating trends in moderation and guiding your clients, and if they come to you for your experience and your expertise, giving them alternative options. They may come and want that dusty pink or a navy blue on the wall, and then you give them examples of what that's going to look like and how it's going to work for them, and guide them to different tones or different quantities of that particular colorway being incorporated into a space is our job.
Yeah, and I often think that things will stand out and look an eyesore if you know that it's not essentially who they are. If someone is trying to shoehorn a trend in, whether that's a design like a chair style or a sofa style or a color, whatever it is, you can tell when something has just been shoehorned in. But if something is on trend, but it happens to really suit the personality of that person, and it really is a part of them, an expression of who they are, then it will never date. But things will only date, I believe, if it is really not you, and you never feel comfortable with it, because it looks obvious that it's not an expression of you.
It looks forced.
Yeah, it looks forced. Yeah.
It's just more, the trend is just almost too broad. It's really up to the individual's sort of personality to almost create their own trend, I guess.
Yeah, and part of our role, I think, is giving people the confidence to do that. You know, trends are a comfort zone for a lot of people. It's really easy to fall into a trend situation. You think, yeah, that's fine, that works, it's now, that's fine. But to be able to work with the client and actually draw out, and this is why I think Karen is so clever, that she's able to kind of draw that inner person out so that you can actually work out what are the colors that they respond to as an individual. And this is where the psychology of color is so key, and I think, you know, is only really just now becoming to be understood. So people might, I think, Brian, you said this, people might come to you saying, yeah, I really want the latest colors, and then you kind of go, well, you know, really, does that suit the building? Is that going to suit your room? You know, the light's not coming from the right direction. How can we work to build that in, but give you something that's altogether more appropriate and unique to you?
And I think that with trends, they work well for people who aren't going to be hiring an architect or a designer, maybe people who don't have the inner confidence to pull a scheme together, or don't have natural style and don't know what they're doing. It's easy to pick up a magazine, go into a showroom, see the color swatches, and bring something cohesive together that suits, that they're happy with, and that suits their lifestyle. I think it's less important when you're engaging a design professional, because they're going to guide you in creating something that resembles your personality and reflects that personality to people who visit the home.
Then the high street solution that you've just described, I would argue that that's actually styling rather than design.
Decor.
A bit like fast fashion.
And I'm just going to say something, Brian, I hope you don't mind, when you said that, I think you said something like someone doesn't have a natural style. I'm sure this is not what you meant, but I really believe everyone has a natural style. It's just that sometimes people are so overwhelmed with what is available, because when you look in every magazine, the job of the magazine is to, you know, look, the bottom line about trends, I think we have to see the elephant in the room. It's commercial, it's about sales and
selling
marketing,
stuff,
right? Yeah, it's because if we all have what we've already got and there is nothing new to buy, you know, what would happen with the economy? So, you know, this whole thing, it's not sustainable anyhow, but magazines really need to show, they either have their own style or they show a broad range of styles, because they need to appeal to everybody. And I think everyone really does have their own innate style, and they really do know what they want, but there is so much available. And when you get told, this is the latest this is the latest must, oh my God, the must have. And you know, oh, that was so last week, now the new must have is this. And so people get really confused and they go into overwhelm. And if you do slavishly follow trends and not that's when you can go into overwhelm, instead of letting it inspire you, or instead of letting it go, oh, actually, is that really me? No, it's not, but this is. And so everyone, I really believe, does have this have a natural style. It's just that a lot of people do lack that confidence, because a trend quite often tells you that what you like is wrong and what the trend is right. And
have you ever had clients?
We have to be off this. We have to get off this roller coaster, don't you think?
Have you ever had a client though that sort of says, this room isn't working, I don't understand why I keep buying things but nothing fixes it?
Always, yeah.
Always. Happens all the time. And it's because they're going into high street stores and coming back with 2 cushions.
Yeah.
The latest colour.
The confidence thing is part of the, you know, what I meant was not having the complement or confidence rather to implement a scheme, or to or the conviction to decide what their style is. I do think there are people who have zero interest in design and therefore don't have a style because they just don't have it. They'll say, I'll just take that, it'll do, it's a sofa, I can sit on it and I can watch TV. And that's sort of,
yeah, and it's our job to ask the right questions, to ask better questions to elicit that from them, because it is in there. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are too busy doing too many other things, and of course designing their house isn't a priority for them, but they want it done. Yeah.
I also love when you work with a private client, and often that they'll be like that. They'll say, "Oh, I haven't got a clue. It's not my thing. I don't really know. I don't know what I like." And once you start to work with them, you see them grow in confidence, and you see them actually beginning to establish their own. They begin to feel their own way. So that by the end of the process, if you've done it right and you've drawn them out, they're really enjoying it. Yeah. And I find that a great joy, because you've given it a whole other kind of string to someone's bow, or another aspect to their lives that they didn't even know they had.
What's really interesting, clients that say they don't have any style or don't know what they want, and they come to you, when you put options in front of them, they're very quickly able to say, no, we don't like that. And then you say, well, you do know what you like. You can't verbalize what you want, but it's very quick to eliminate stuff that you don't like. And it's an exciting and often frustrating process.
Yeah.
I think it's very much like fashion, isn't it? As we've always said in this industry.
Yeah, definitely.
Trying to find your own style, whether you're using magazines or whatever to, buy fast fashion or be more couture, I guess. But do you think social media has affected the way people look at trends?
I think it makes it easier for them to consume trends, certainly. Yeah. People, it's all just on your phone and you're just flicking it and looking at it all the time. So that's definitely been a way that retailers and people that are in sales are able to kind of reach a broader public.
I think social media is great with giving people a glimpse of the aspirational lifestyle. They'll be seeing images of spas and hotel bedroom suites and restaurants and bars, and taking inspiration and influence from those mega villas and super yachts and private jets and exquisite rental houses on a beach in Phuket. Social media is great at letting people tap into that and let it inspire them, and hopefully take snippets of it and bring it into their own home.
Yeah. And what I've noticed, especially on Instagram, is Instagram has really brought colour back to life. In the 90s and the noughties, it was very much white and black and chrome, and now colour. That you can see colour all over Instagram. Sometimes too much colour is just the same as not enough. We can't live. We can't live with the radio up full ball all of the time. So living in this high chromatic is not that's to me is just as worrying as people who are just only living in grey or just all living in white. This isn't sustainable either. But it has piqued people's curiosity, and it has made people far more comfortable and more adventurous to try colour. So for that, I'm grateful with Instagram.
So then, Karen, if that's the case, if you want to sort of tone down perhaps certain areas in the house, and this is just something that's occurred to me, do you think there are certain areas within someone's home that where it's more appropriate to perhaps introduce some of those very ephemeral, trendy colours?
Well, see, when I work with colour, it's about behaviour. So it's always, what behaviour do you want to have in a space, in that room? What's the context? What's it being used for? And depending on the behaviour is what the colour is. So the colour always comes last. The colour isn't the thing that you start with, because if you start with colour, then you will go down this rabbit warren where, oh, I don't like that one. That reminds me of my school uniform. Everyone, gets really caught up. But I always start the conversation in, how do you want to feel in that space? What are you going to be doing in that space? Who's it for? I ask all of those kind of questions, because that bit of information then informs what the colour and what the colour palettes are going to be, whether it's high chroma, low chroma, the proportion, the placement. And then you're able to test it, because then you can see how people are behaving and responding in that space. And if you've got it right, because you've already set at the beginning how you want people to feel in that space, how you want them to behave in that space. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Mhm.
So if
completely.
it happens to be, so it happens to be a trend color, so be it. But it's got nothing to do with that. It's to me, it's always got to do with how do people want to feel and behave in that space, and then you work. You do the design style to support that, and you do the color palette to support that as well, because that's all about influencing positive behavior, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think, Brian, you and I, as designers, we're always looking for what people are going to do in the space and how they're going to use it and what's appropriate. It always starts with function, and then form follows later.
Yeah, so you're talking about function and form, so I'm talking about behavior. So these
Yeah,
two
no, I
things
know.
need to go together.
It's just our own little slant on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the functionality of it, and then it's the behavioral. It's how people are actually going to live in the space. Yeah. And these two things end up then being, this is like the masculine, the feminine of design. These two things, when they come together, that's the beautiful unity.
Yeah. So on saying that then, so, you know, we've said that trends are probably there more for commercial reasons. But if you take that away, should it be more of an educational process for us to be teaching people that is more of an individual thing, that trends should just be scrapped? And we just need to, you know, educate people on sort of looking at it in that way.
Well, you know, trends can be a bit of fun, but as I said, I think if people are investing an enormous amount of money in their homes and it's got to last for a long time, then you do need to educate them, because you need to sort of say, you know, again, you get someone come clutching a little piece of fabric that they've seen somewhere, and again, we always try and steer them away from that, because you don't want someone to walk in 3 years later and go, aha, spring summer's 2020. It's that whole, you know, you just want to make sure that the thing is timeless, so that it will last a long time, albeit possibly with some peripheral updates.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing, is that with the way if you think about people, the way we dress, or people, the way they present themselves to the world, there's never a week goes by where you don't buy a new lipstick, have a haircut, buy a pair of earrings, buy a pair of shoes, change your dress, change your nail color, whatever it happens to be. And yet with interiors, people expect them to do them, and they expect them to stay done. And I don't think that's a realistic expectation. I don't know why people think that that's going to happen. So, but nevertheless, you've invested an enormous amount of money in it, and therefore you want it to last longer than the current trend.
Yeah, we try to encourage clients to look at their interiors as part of the maintenance of a property. You'll have your walls refurbished, the floors cleaned, the fabrics cleaned and re-protected or stain guarded, you know, every year or 2 years. Make additions or amendments to update and adjust the property based on how you have found living there and the experience you've gotten from it. There's nothing wrong with changing a piece of furniture every so often, or updating a fabric or a color or a wall color when you're doing it, rather than letting it date and just sit there.
Also, people's needs will change. You know, the room that you designed when the children were 3 and 5 will be different to the room you need when they're 13 and 15.
And also, who we are as people, we change, we grow. And given that color is emotion, and it could be that there is something that's going on in your life that you feel that you need certain colors around you. When you change, and we all change, we know as human beings, we don't stay in the same state. It could be a life experience or a life event, but also could be you as a person growing, and you know, personal development. I mean, this is, you know, we all are always changing. And as that happens, the colors that we need will also are likely to also change. So this will be in flux. There will be movement and change, but it's not that you necessarily have to redo everything every 5 years and throw everything out. It's looking at those small changes that unless you want to do that, of course, but it's looking at those small changes that you feel will give you what you need for the person that you are at the time. And that's and that supports you as a person, and that's really important, because you can't, you know, I know people that have lived in houses for 10, 20 years, and they have felt that it no longer represents who they are, and it no longer serves them. But they were so worried about what to change it to because they didn't know what to do. So, you know, so your question before about are trends important? I mean, trends can play into all of this. For me, it's about not following them slavishly. It's about using them for inspiration. They can inspire you. You can, you know, look through magazines. There will be things in there that you think, oh, I really connect to that. But just don't, I would always say to people, just be very conscious and aware if you're doing it because you want to fit in, because you want to belong. Is it because every other person on your street is using a certain type of grey paint, which this, you know, we all know this happened. There was a certain brand of name paint that everyone was using because that way they could say, I've got such and such paint in my house. And is that really then who you are? Because a lot of people then were saying to me,
talking about?
don't know, I can't remember. And then they were going, my house is fashionable, it looks great, I'm really tired, and I don't feel comfortable in my own place. That is not what you want to do. You don't. And in fact, I did some research a few years back, and the research came out to say that 75% of people in the UK decorated their home for other people to like it, for other people to walk in and go, oh, you've got a great house. That's insane. That's insane. So yeah, I guess, you know, I certainly am on a mission to change that. Absolutely, because you're the one that lives in your home.
That's
it's not
sad.
It can be achingly fashionable and on trend, and you can be miserable in your own home, and I think that's terrible.
I think because home is such an important statement of who you are and what you've achieved as a person. For some people, having a sort of, you know, a bragging suite, you know, or some public facing rooms where it is, and then perhaps they have more private spaces elsewhere in the property that are more intimately them. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to decorate for other people, not exactly decorate for other people, but, you know, to have things that demonstrate who you are or your view of yourself in the world.
Well, that's aspirational then, isn't it?
Yeah,
I suppose that's who they're aspiring, and that's an aspirational, but they still might not like it, and they still might not be happy. And if people have enough rooms that they can just go, this is my entertaining room and this is for everybody else, well, aren't they lucky? Not everyone has that. Not
that's true.
Maybe the houses you work in, Susie, but it's not everybody. So yeah, usually people have to make use of, you know,
I do think that there is a history of people having the good room, the good sitting room, or the, you know, or it might be a part of the house. It's just where they welcome people, and I think people put more, even though they're not everyday rooms and they don't use them as much. The majority of the budget will go to those public facing areas, whether that's welcoming the in-laws for Christmas or a birthday.
Tea vicar.
Yeah, people are just used to doing it. It's what our parents and their parents before them used to do, and we still see that happen quite a lot. There is the formal drawing room and the formal or the bridge playing room or the library or the study, and that's where they'll either have clients come in for meetings or people from the office come and meet them, or they'll do a little bit of entertaining, light entertaining, and then they'll sacrifice the areas that they live in because the budget has gone elsewhere.
But interestingly, if you look at Japan, for example, where historically people, this actually is something that's changing, which is not something we're going to talk about today, but historically in Japan, they haven't entertained in their own home at all. They always entertain out. They take friends out to a restaurant. And as a consequence, there is almost no interior design in normal houses in Japan. There really isn't. Very, very rich people do it, but actually normal people, the most they might do when they go into an apartment, they might buy themselves a pair of curtains and a sofa, and that'll be it. And, you know, they just don't think about it because nobody sees it except them. So it's a bit sad for them actually, because, you know, they don't get that opportunity to create something that's really cocooning and personal.
Maybe they've been at home a bit more this time in the last few months. They might change their mind. So sort of finally, what do you see as kind of the future of where trends are going? I know we've covered quite a lot, but where you kind of think the industry's going with trends, whether, you know, they'll still be coming out, obviously, because as I've said about the commercial aspect, but what do you think is going to sort of come out of this year?
In terms of those retail little trends?
Retail, and also sort of, you know, whether trends will ever be seen as like an individual.
I think there'll be a trend for sort of techno gadgets as people are spending more time in their own home. They'll buy themselves, you know, really cool speakers, Bluetooth devices, that sort of thing. There's going to be a lot of people looking for sort of techie stuff to use at home. Maybe, Brian, you mentioned people are making more of a priority of their outdoor spaces. So perhaps, you know, garden furniture is going to be a really big thing, but then, you know, we've only got another month of summer, so come October that may not be so relevant either.
God, only a month.
You know,
I think a lot of people, or I hope a lot of companies will start to focus on developing better ranges of indoor-outdoor fabrics, and more emphasis on that on the high street, educating people that you don't just have your plain grey cushions outside, or singular ranges of outdoor furniture when they've got expansive ranges of indoor furniture. Maybe it's dual use furniture that can be used in a sun terrace or taken outside and left outside. I'm hoping that trends will move slightly that way over the next 12 months.
Karen, how do you sort of see things playing out?
Well, yeah, I've got a completely different view on the future of trends. Trends for me, trends aren't sustainable. You know, there's the yearly trends, there's the macro trends, there's the micro trends. You turn around, there's a new trend. With waste, with consumerism, with everything that's going on, I really, really hope there's a slowing down of trends. I hope that the trends can morph into different years, and we can have longevity, not that this is out, this is new, now that's out, now this is in. You know, if we could slow it down. Trends by its very nature is quick and
disposable.
Disposable, and this is the amount of waste in fashion is mind-blowingly shocking, and even if it's with interior products, with anything, there is so much waste that we don't need to live like this. So I really want to see sustainable trends. That's almost an oxymoron. The other thing that I'm seeing, which I've been watching this for a couple of years now, is, you know, and I'm going to say the younger generation, but really I think it's people who are also young at heart. It's more about personalization. So people are buying things that are a personal expression of who they are, and they're really personalizing, and they're making their own choices and their own decisions. And I think to be able to make your own choice and your own decisions is in itself a really important trend, and one that we will need going forward. So that, to me, you know, people always talk about the millennial generation, but I think you're just millennial at heart. You know, Iris Apfel, she's nearly 100, and to me she's a millennial. So this is what I can see in when it comes to trends is about personalization and about choice, personal choice. So that's my take on the future of trends.
Great. Well, this is a massive topic. It's a huge topic.
It's massive.
And we could talk about it all day, but we haven't got time for that, I'm afraid. But I think we've covered quite a lot, and hopefully we can all think about it a little bit more individually than on a broader level in the future. But thank you very much to my panelists, Susie, Karen, Brian, and myself. And hope to see you all very soon. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye. Bye.
Hi everyone, and thank you for listening to our talk on the future of trends. I'm now joined by two of the panelists, Karen Huller and Susie Rumbold, to answer some of your questions. Brian sends his apologies. So please ask us any questions while we're talking. We'll hopefully get through all of them. So the first question I'm going to direct to Susie. For clients that don't know what they want, and you say in the talk to ask better questions to your clients, what questions would you ask to understand their style?
Oh, that's a tricky one. So in terms of understanding their style, you've got to first understand what they're intending to do in the space. So that's the sort of function part. But then in terms of their style, what we normally do actually is we set up some Pinterest boards for them as a general principle. We get them to dump images onto a Pinterest board, hopefully with a comment to say what it is about the image that's appealed to them. And then once we've kind of pulled that together, we would then throw away all those images and kind of start again. But what we find is that people will unconsciously pin the same thing over and over and over again without realizing that they're doing it. And it might be that it's a color that they're pinning, it might be a shape they're responding to, it might be a texture they're responding to, or it might be a feeling that they're responding to, but there'll be commonality in all their images. Generally, that's something that they may not actually be aware of themselves.
Okay, cool. And Karen, looking at colour trends this year, I know you don't love looking at colour trends, but Frosty Green and Royal Blue have been mentioned. Why do you think people have gravitated towards them?
So I think the answer is actually in the question is that people gravitate towards a colour because it is on trend. It might not necessarily be because of the colour itself. And that would be the short answer for that question. I mean, I think that's really what happens is that as soon as a colour is on trend, even if people like it or not, because I was talking about before in the talk about the sense of belonging and the sense of wanting to be a part of something, people will pick on that will use that colour for the very fact that it is on trend.
Yeah, fair enough. And how do you think we can balance trends and timeless style? Should we only focus on lasting pieces and styles, or have a mishmash of both? Karen?
I think
Susie. I was looking at you.
Sorry. I think it is possible to mix some trend elements into schemes. I think from a point of view of sustainability, and I think I said in the talk that, you know, it's not like going to shop and buying a t-shirt. You want it to last quite a lot longer.
Yeah.
If you're spending a lot of money on a room or a series of rooms, but you can introduce elements of, you know, maybe it's things that you will only keep for a couple of seasons. Maybe, you know, have different cushions you can bring in, or, you know, change a lampshade or something like that. But generally speaking, I think we should be looking, as designers, we should seriously be looking beyond trends to things that are going to give sterling service and be much loved places for our clients.
Yeah.
And I would add to that by saying that just because something's on trend doesn't mean it's timeless. It's only not timeless if it's something that is not you and that you don't love. But something doesn't have to be on trend and you will love it forever, or it could be on trend and you do. Because quite often I find the only way I can get the colours that I like, I have to wait for it to actually be on trend for it to even be available. And then when it's available, I snap it up in everything I can possibly get, because I'm likely never to be able to get that colour again. So, you know, it definitely does not mean that trend doesn't mean timeless. It's timeless if it is for you because it resonates with who you are. I think that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess along that same stream of thought, interior brands do they need to focus on delivering long-lasting trends? And that kind of that topic about trends and sustainability. Trends is very fast fashion, as we discussed. And is it hard to kind of keep trendy, but also keep updating it? And, you know, it's no recycling, and how do we manage it?
Yeah, I would even challenge why being on trend is so important. That's what I would, that would be the challenge. That's what I would say is look and see why that is so important to you, because the key is in there. And talking about, you know, human behaviours from the discussion you had earlier today, this is all about human behaviour. So what is it about our human behaviour that makes us want to feel that we have to be on trend, as opposed to having pieces that we love, regardless of whether they're on trend or not?
Yeah.
I also think that part of the role of the designer is to work with your clients to give them the confidence to develop their own style, so that they can move beyond mere trend, because trend by its very nature is something that's going to be disposable.
Absolutely. I've got an interesting question here for you, Karen. How do you approach colorblind people?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, because nobody sees color the same. Because we all see color differently, we could all have some type of visual impairment without even realizing it. It's just that people who are severely colorblind, it's far more noticeable. But they can also, and there really does have to be a lot more studies, but they work out their own strategies of how they relate to colour. Every single colourblind person will see colour differently. No two will say the same, and I think there's a bit of a myth that if you're colourblind you see it all the same. Yeah. You don't, because they all have it at varying degrees. So it's really about looking at your individual client and seeing to what degree they have and what colours they are actually able to see, and then working from that point.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I guess following on from that, they will probably respond more positively to the colours that they can see. If you're showing them something and all they're seeing is shades of grey, then they're probably not going to be responding to it with any great passion anyway.
Mm-hmm. And Susie, how important I think this is coming back to the changing in spaces and how sort of open plan might be going back a bit to sort of separate rooms. How important does flexible interior solutions be going forward? You know, like internal bifolding doors to separate spaces, you know, that kind of shutting off spaces.
Sort of zoning, flexible zoning within areas. I actually think it's going to be more and more important going forward, given that we're all trying to do so much more in our homes. You know, we're not treating our houses like dormitories anymore. You know, it's not just a place to sleep, it's a place where you're going to end up doing everything for all members of the family, all ages, all stages of their lives, possibly for the foreseeable future. You know, I don't think we're going to go back to the way we were before. I really don't. Yeah. And so our spaces, our personal spaces are going to have to work really, really hard. And I think, you know, the more clever solutions we can come up with for being able to hive off spaces for different areas at different times of the day. And it could be a physical zoning in the sense of a bifold, or it could be a temporal zoning in the sense that something happens one part of the day and then a different function goes on at a different part of the day. And perhaps it's a storage solution that means that, you know, when function A is finished, everything just goes away so that function B can commence. And I think we're going to have to be really even more clever at listening to our clients' requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you seen like biophilic design? You know, I think that was quite a massive topic in the last few years. Has that sort of become more of a trend? Sorry, I keep saying the word trend to you guys. But biophilic design become more important within the home as well? I think, Karen.
Yeah. Biophilic, what that means is connecting back to nature, and that is really where so I think as we move away from nature and every step we take away, it means that we have lost that connection. We could say that biophilic's a trend, but it will be something that will now be here to stay. So it might have taken a trend to get it back on focus and get it back onto the table. But really, our connection with nature is imperative, and I think it will be pretty much our lifesaver going forward. So, and you're not to sound too dramatic, but I think with everything that is going on, I think to connect back to nature is to connect back to ourselves, and that's really everything that I stand for, and all the work that I do. So, yeah, bring it on.
It also ties very neatly into our current awareness and increasing awareness of mental health, because I think, you know, it was a nice to have previously, but now people are so much more conscious of it, and they're aware of the benefits that it can bring. So yeah, I agree with Karen. I think it's definitely that's one that's here to stay. So therefore, I probably wouldn't call it a trend, actually.
Sure. We've just got time for one more quick question. I think we touched on this during the talk, but how much do you think influencers on social media guide people's style choices?
I think, again, it's a bit like the sort of, you know, Pinterest thing. I know people follow.
I think it's huge. Oh, sorry, you go.
Right. People follow people on, but quite often it can be a bit schizophrenic. But they'll keep gravitating back to the people that they like. So you can take direction from the people that they follow on things like Instagram, and I think that again is a useful tool for designers without following them slavishly, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to give your clients their own thing, not somebody else's thing.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I ditto exactly what Susie said.
Great. Well, that's all the time we've got today for our live Q&A. But I just want to thank both of you very much for the talk and for being here for the question and answer session. For anyone watching, this will be on demand for the next month on the Designscape platform. And all that leaves me to say is thank you very much, guys. And thank you to everyone for watching. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.